searching for the perfect love. You can't purchase it, you perfect love. Don't be searching for the perfect love unless the love you searching for someone inside yourself.
Welcome back to the Women in Hip Hop Wednesdays podcast. I'm your host, your music midwife, and very nerdy hip hop homegirl, Coco Peila. I'm an MC, singer, songwriter, record producer, and the MC is what qualifies me to take you on this journey. This week, we are bringing back Her Story in the Pages. Y'all know, as a bookworm, I love this segment. And we are currently reading through God Save the Queens, The Essential History of Women in Hip Hop, written by Iandoli. If you want to purchase the book, make sure you just go down to the YouTube description. I've included the link below. And as always, thank you, Kathy, for giving us your blessing to read the book. We are starting this episode on page 96, Interlude. Who you calling a bitch? There's a long-standing debate over the word bitch, one that carried over into generations of hip-hop. At times, even the word female can sound pejorative, depending on the vocal inflections of the man saying it. But bitch has had its own controversial history. In the late 80s, when Yo-Yo aligned with NWA alum Ice Cube, he was coming off a track record of songs like A Bitch is a Bitch from NWA's 1987 compilation project, NWA and the Posse, where misogyny was not only understated in tone, it was overstated in lyrics as well. Now, the title bitch don't apply to all women, but all women have a little bitch in them. Still, Yo-Yo felt conflicted about the word bitch and its targeted usage. I remember doing one interview where the journalist asked, "What do I feel about men calling women bitches?" I said, "Well, they're talking about those type of girls," Yo-Yo said. So when NWA said a bitch is a bitch, Ice Cube was talking about the one that only wanted to use the guys for their money, drug dealing type of girls. So we associated the word bitch to that type of woman. She likened it to the phrase gold digger, which was something she didn't identify as anyway, so it didn't mean much to her if the term was used. Da Brat had a similar philosophy, breaking it down in the 1997 documentary Rhyme and Reason. When guys say bitch or hoe, it don't bother me because of the simple fact that, one, they're not talking about me, Brat explains. And where I'm from, the west side of Chicago, we could see our homegirls and be like, "What's up, bitch? Shut the fuck up, you stupid." It's all in fun, and it really depends on how you say it. You know when somebody's saying it wrong. You know when they're trying to be derogatory about that shit. She compares it to the N-word, where its levels of appropriateness is contingent upon the person who's using it. In the same documentary, Lauryn Hill describes a whole other perspective. "I'm not really big on that," she says. "I happen to think that if we hold the women in higher respect and the women who have the children of these men who are calling the women bitches and hoes will treat their children with more love and raise up stronger individuals." Bitch would come to mean something more like difficult woman as hip hop evolved. Since the financial success of hip hop grew and female rappers were afforded the luxury of being high maintenance. Lil' Kim owned the word in 1996, referring to herself as Queen Bitch, Supreme Bitch on her hardcore album Cut, aptly titled Queen Bitch. She would abbreviate it to Queen B, the letter with the double meaning of Queen B, B-E-E, like the bee. Miami rap vixen Trina would later emerge with the tagline of the baddest bitch. The self identification of the bitch became the new wave, taking the sting out of the word as a greater awareness developed in the minds of female rappers as they grew up. Suddenly, it wasn't cool as it once was to shrug off the word when it came from a man. Until you started looking at and hearing women call themselves bitches and hearing Too Short say, bitch. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, hold on, Yo-Yo says. The feminist movement didn't really take place until we started being more aware of who we were growing up. The bitch discussion is now almost a moot point in hip hop, especially when, for the most part, the word is back to being embraced by female artists. Maybe this thing has been removed or the argument's been exhausted, at least for the younger generation. After all, one bad bitch doesn't ruin the bunch these days. She makes it that much better. Chapter 8. Are we there yet? Mariana Mary Vieira is in her zone, cloaked in her alter ego, Ladybug Mecca, and rocking on stage for adoring fans with a passion that radiates like it's her first time behind the mic. After she finishes her set with her group Diggable Planets at UK's Barclaycard Arena in Birmingham, she stands at the back of the stage to watch Lauryn Hill perform. It's the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill 20th anniversary tour, and Diggable Planets are the opening act. While Mecca is awaiting the arrival of Miss Hill, there's a tap on her shoulder. It's Lauryn Hill herself. The two give each other the warmest hug, and then Lauryn Hill hits the stage. It's been years since we've seen each other, Mecca tells me, though their initial arrivals in hip-hop were simultaneous. That moment between Mecca and Miss Hill was more than just a greeting. It was a survivor's embrace. Between 1993 and 1994, hip-hop's sound was rapidly expanding. The golden age was well underway, and during this period, some of the most prolific and influential debut hip-hop albums would surface, along with second and third endeavors from artists who had already hit their stride and had zero plans of stopping. The release of Tupac's follow-up album, Strictly for My Niggas, would propel him to stardom. Onyx released their aggressive debut album, Back the Fuck Up, along with Mobb Deep's debut, Juvenile Hell, and Souls of Mischief's laid-back introduction, 93 Till Infinity. Run DMC leveled up with their sixth album, Down with the King, as Snoop Dogg brought his debut album, Doggy Style. Wu-Tang introduced themselves on Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, and A Tribe Called Quest dropped their critically acclaimed third studio album, Midnight Marauders. Women were shining in new and expansive ways. Queen Latifah delivered Black Rain armed with her most successful single to date, the respect-commanding UNITY. Change was on the horizon, considering the song hard body drilled the question, who you calling a bitch, into our brains, and men and women alike loved it. Then MC Lights brought Ain't No Other with the Grammy-nominated single Roughneck that challenged men who didn't fit the rough and rugged bill. Salt and Pepper were very necessary with their fourth studio album and the aforementioned success of Shoop and What a Man. Moni Love came through with In a Word or Two as Diggable Planets dropped their debut album, Reaching, a new refutation of time and space. By 1994, Diggable Planets were on their follow-up album, Blowout Comb, as the Fugees came out with their debut album, Blended on Reality. Gang Starr dropped their fourth studio album, Hard to Earn. Outkast released their debut, Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music. Not to mention Nas's game-changing debut, Illmatic, along with the Notorious B.I.G.'s groundbreaking debut, Ready to Die. Da Brat released her album, Functified, along with Method Man's solo album. All right, Tical. I don't know how you say it, if it's Tikal or Tikal. Maybe I'm doing too much California right over here. Okay. The list goes on and touches various regions and territories across the nation where hip hop was not only fully immersed in the major label machine, but experimenting with sounds and styles, and within a few short years would land in consistent pop radio rotation with a mainstream audience. It was dubbed the Golden Era for good reason. We were leaving the fog of the gangster rap takeover, and more artists were trying to lighten the air with soulful music while remaining impactful and keeping social consciousness within the hip hop frame of reference, or at least trying to. It was also the peak of the boom bap production style, a divine combination where the kick meets the snare in studios filled with Timberland boot tracks. This was perhaps the first time in hip hop's then 2-decade history where you couldn't pick a song or two and use them accurately to define hip hop by a singular sound. Album sales were on the upswing as Tribe's Midnight Marauders reached over 500,000 units sold a year after its release, and Wu-Tang's 36 Chambers reached platinum 2 years later. It's also indicative of the slow-burning replay value of the works released, where projects were being discovered and rediscovered almost in record time. All eyes on everyone if your audience was right. For the female artist, there was a challenge approaching. Over diversification meant figuring out where they fit within a rapidly growing environment. It was really exciting, Ladybug Mecca recalls. Really fast. Everything was new, meeting lots of new people, traveling to new places. It was mostly a positive experience in the very beginning. A group like Diggable Planets arrived in the heart of this sonic expansion, complete with jazzier production that wrapped itself around the trio's sharp lyricism. Visually, the group dressed as what Mecca defined as a jazz-influenced ensemble, where even she donned trousers, button-down shirts, and hard-bottom shoes. Mecca stood petite yet proud, with short, slicked-back hair parted on the side. She was pegged as a tomboy, a title that she openly embraced at 18 years old, though not everyone was welcoming of that tomboy swag. Before the first album came out, we were meeting with a stylist, and she's also a clothing designer, Mecca explains, and she did some sketches. Really nice lady, but she tried to put me in a cat suit or something, and that just was not me. I was a tomboy. I was still that rebellious teenager that hated the fact that men lusted over my body, and I was prepared to fight you. So there was no way I was about to throw on a cat suit and get on stage to do music videos. Not at that age, not at that point in time. Over time, the subtle sexist nuances became more glaring for Mecca. I think as I just became more aware of how ingrained sexism is in hip hop and the world in general, and just how the patriarchy has a grip on even those that are closest to you. That was tough, because the hip hop community is a real family for me outside of my own family. And little by little, I just started experiencing really disrespectful things from men in the industry. Just shit like that is very shocking when it happens. It just wakes you up. Here was an artist who once rhymed, "Rip it till dawn, kick it till dawn. Hip hop is the fix, or else we be gone." And on Reachin's album cut, Where I'm From. Yet the love of hip hop was becoming less of a fix and more of a poison in the midst of a growing gender divide. It was a lesson in patience, but also in maintaining self-control, especially when respect for the music and respect for the women making it were not in harmony. I had to learn how to maintain my personality, she says, but at the same time strengthen that commanded respect because there are men out there that will really test that shit. Diggable Planets secured their success with their first single, Rebirth of Slick, Cool Like That, which earned them a Grammy in 1994 for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group and hit #1 on the Billboard Hot Rap Singles chart. The trio spent the next few years touring and releasing more music before going on a lengthy hiatus. They reunited in 2005 for the release of a compilation project titled Beyond the Spectrum, The Creamy Spy Chronicles. Mecca's solo debut album, Trip the Light Fantastic, arrived that same year. Ladybug Mecca took a break from the music from 1995 to 2005. Her life took her to other places. She was mainly focused on being a caregiver to her parents, but the short-lived collective success of Diggable Planets could perhaps be attributed to just how fast hip-hop was evolving during that time. The geographical landscape was expanding, no longer relegated to the East and West Coasts, where even the neighboring cities outside of NYC and LA had their own je ne sais quoi. Take Philadelphia, arguably a truncated version of the New York City rap scene, considering its artists were consistently straddling a line between street and soul. In 1993, an artist emerged from the belly of Philly with a perfectly coiffed afro that stood like a crown. Her name was Bahamadia, and she was making waves locally with the release of her single, Funk Vibe. Her voice was gruff yet slick, and she would smoothly lure her audience in when she rhymed. Influenced by fellow Philly radio jock turned rapper Lady B, as well as Salt and Peppa and Queen Latifah, Bahamadia continued the progression of authentic female voices, creating her own lane in her local hip-hop scene. In 1994, she aligned with Brooklyn duo Gang Starr to release the single Total Wreck, produced by Gang Starr's rhymesmith Guru. The track would later appear on her 1996 debut album, Collage. While 1996 saw an influx of female rappers with male mentors, it wasn't widely known that some of the men were ghostwriting for the women they were pushing. Don't get it twisted. Men had ghostwriters too, though the code of conduct was like Fight Club or Omeretta. There are all these references I don't know. No one spoke on that, yet they were freely rocking back and forth on their heels when it came to taking credit for the ladies. Bahamadia had her head too deep in her own rhyme book to even notice. I wasn't even aware that some people had people writing for them, she says, noting that she always created her music with her own pen. That's why I focused so much on my lyrical content, because I felt like that was the measuring stick that I had to adhere to. Born Antonia D. Reed, Bahamadia entered the music industry as a quiet force, looking to align with like-minded female rappers to keep the growing going in the culture-based genre. Remember in the Source magazine back in the day, they used to have those pictures in the back and you would see all of these artists and they would be hanging out, she asks, with a slightly embarrassed laugh at herself. I found out one time at an industry party that this stuff was staged. I thought that it was a community and everybody's cool. Yo, my heart was broken when I realized it was staged, a lot of it. That was the business of music though. That wasn't the culture of hip hop. After that realization, Bahamadia learned to navigate rather fluidly through hip hop while establishing some bonds with her female peers. Mecca from Diggable Planets was the first female that I met in the industry that I actually built a genuine camaraderie with to this day. She says, she was the one that showed me the ins and outs of the business. She was the first one that I disclosed to that I was going to name my first project Collage. And she was the one that told me, do you realize that you can create your own cover art? I didn't know any of that. She showed me the ropes and stuff. Bahamadia toured with everyone from Lauryn Hill to Lil' Kim and even Da Brat. While she lived in a similar space as Lauryn, Bahamadia managed to balance the heightened sexiness of Kim and high-powered energy of Da Brat, thereby proving she could coexist with like-minded peers while still offering a much-needed contrast to other female artists. It was an interesting dynamic for me too, because I would do pop stuff still, and then I would turn around and do some underground stuff, and then I would do some electronica stuff, she says. It was always diverse for me, and I always thought that the common thread, particularly with us as women musicians in hip hop, was that it was always a segregated element there. I don't know if that was mainly coming from the women or was it coming from the teams behind the women, especially the ones that had the major deals at the time. Recognizing the split between men and women in hip hop, Bahamadia elected to keep her skills at the forefront and everything else second. For me, even when I got my hair cut and had that afro, that was about me showing my independence, saying, this is my hair and I have every right to wear my hair how I want to wear it. She even deepened the tone of her voice for her music. I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to put on a hard shell because that's me. That's my protective shell, she says. I didn't want them to look at anything about me except for myself and my talent and my business acumen, or what I thought I had at the time developed. To get me by, I felt like I had to do that. I shouldn't have had to do that just so I could survive. I shouldn't have had to do that. Bahamadia sat in between two worlds of underground and mainstream hip hop that existed between the 1990s and early 2000s, a complicated space to say the least. There was this all or nothing manifesto permeating the hip hop industry. Either you surrendered to Puffy's shiny suit era and tailored your sound specifically for mainstream with boisterous samples and pop standard BPMs, or you slid to the polar opposite, the indie scene fueled by labels like Raucous Records that pledged an organic sound that emanated from artists rocking 555 soul hoodies. Few could live in the middle, but Bahamadia was willing to try to forge a success story there amid the constant comparisons thrown her way. In one breath, she was compared to indie titans like Jean Grey, known earlier as rapper What, and in another to the iconic Lauryn Hill. In 1997, she changed the game by rapping over house-infused production on the track New Forms, a risky move since there was little experimentation during this period. You were either syrupy in the mainstream or stripped of any flair in the underground. Not Bahamadia. Collaborating with British producer Ronnie Size of the drum and bass collective Represent, she set a new standard. That rhyming pattern would find its way into hip-hop years later, primarily through Timbaland's own work and his work with Missy Elliott, though it was Bahamadia who first took the leap. I remember one time, I think it was in an interview with Timbaland or something, and he was asked how he came up with that style sonically, Bahamadia says. And I think he said something to the order of he made a mistake on the drum pads or something. But that style, we had been doing that like 5 years or something prior. While her debut had been released via EMI, in 2000, she went indie with her follow-up, BB Queen. I remember I bought Donald Passman's All You Need to Know About the Music Business for $25, she recalls, and I highlighted the book. I would take it to meetings at the label. That's how I did it. No manager, just a label. I was going to do my second album with EMI. I was going to have all A-list producers and the whole nine, she recalls. And then EMI folded. They got broke, but I was fortunate though, because a lot of artists went to subsidiary labels, but I actually got the option to leave if I wanted to leave or stay. I decided to leave because I felt like the team of people weren't going to be there that understood my direction and who I was as an artist and as an individual. That's when I started touring Europe and stuff like that. Y'all see this box right here? This box right here? What's up, y'all? There are only 33 cassette tapes left. What cassette tapes, you ask? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. These are Confessions of a Black Feminist Rapper Part 2, Trigger Warning, mixtapes. Yes, the album actually drops in December, but in the meantime and between time, I wanted y'all to get a little picture, to hear it, to hear the concepts, to hear the sounds that are going to be on the album. So there are 8 tracks from my forthcoming album on this cassette tape. Yes, it's a real cassette tape, an old school cassette tape. And each cassette tape comes with a Walkman and a handwritten note from me. This is actually one that's about to go out. I'm about to ship it tomorrow. And literally it comes, you know, I bubble wrap it. I'm nice with it, okay? It comes with a cassette tape. It comes with a Walkman and a handwritten note. For me, there are 33 left out of 50. Expect them to sell out. Do not play. The songs are dope. The lyricism is dope. The content is dope. And when you snatch one of these limited edition cassette mixtapes, you also get a ticket to my next event, Altars for Our Inner Children, which I'm throwing in partnership with Creative Wildfire, which is organizations, Movement Generation, Art Co-op, New Economy Coalition, and Climate Justice Alliance. I'm super juiced about this because this is a relationship justice project, and they're sharing funding with me so that now, in addition to you have the different ticket levels, but there's also a pay what you can option for survivors who don't have the means to either pay for the ticket at all or pay the full price. Everyone is welcome. These resources, this community, this space should be available to folks no matter what their situation is at the moment. So big shout out to Creative Wildfire. Thank you so much for this. At this event, I'm going to be sharing a new song that I've been working on, also in partnership with Creative Wildfire, about relationship justice, about the intersections between what we see in intimate partner violence, sexual assault, sexual violence, violence against women and girls, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, sexual exploitation, the connections between that and the rise in fascism, the wars happening, the armed conflicts happening throughout the world, and why it's so important that we believe survivors, that we take what we are saying seriously, and we start really connecting the dots and drawing the lines between the systems of oppression and these symptoms of oppression, and who is getting targeted by these systems and why. And so I'm so juiced to be throwing this event again. If you want to know more about it, I actually already did a video, an episode called Altars for Our Inner Children, where you can learn more about how it went last time. This time we're going to be sharing that song. DJ KK47 will be in the mix. Of course, if you grab a cassette mixtape, you'll get a ticket, and you can also get general admission tickets. What else do I want to say to you? That the way that I teach my workshops is really dope, because you can do the expressive arts version and create your physical altar, or you can write a song or do a journal entry. And so I'm really excited about this party and getting to facilitate this songwriting altar making workshop for survivors and their allies on the 7th of June at 2 p.m. right here in New York City at the university. Of course, just as last time, you'll be able to join online from anywhere in the world if you'd like to, or if you just, can't make it in that day because of what's going on with your body or whatever the case may be. So come join us on June 7th at 2 p.m. at the university. Make sure you snatch your shit up ASAP, because I'm telling you, there are 33 today, and I bet you tomorrow it's going to be 32, and so on and so forth. So snatch it up at cocopeila.com/cassette. CASSETTE. Okay, I love y'all, for real, for real. Meanwhile, a doe-eyed hurricane named Lauryn Hill was slowly making her way into the public eye as a recording artist. In 1993, Lauryn starred opposite Whoopi Goldberg in the Sister Act sequel, Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. Sister Act had been a box office smash, grossing over $139.5 million in the US alone. Sister Act 2 grossed only $57 million domestically, though it proved that Lauryn Hill was a triple threat of actor, singer, MC. In the film, she plays a troubled teen named Rita Watson who both sings and raps and wants a fair shot at stardom. Much to the chagrin of her mother, played by Cheryl Lee Ralph, though the film's success was flimsy, it bolstered Lauryn's popularity, and in 1994, she made her debut as Elle Boogie on the one third of New Jersey bred group The Fugees. Their debut project, Blended on Reality, was sonically uneven as the group was still finding their identity. The first single, Boof Bath, was a hyper introduction, followed by the far more subdued and much more successful follow-up single, Nappy Heads. In the music video, the group is dancing on the steps of the Lower Memorial Library at Columbia University, where Lauryn was a student. The Salaam Remi remix to the album's third single, Vocab, became one of the tracks on the project where Lauryn Hill's potential for greatness came into clear view. However, Lauryn had her own solitary moment on the album on a song called Some Seek Stardom, which would later be the reference point at which it was neatly proven that Elle Boogie could deliver and thrive as a solo artist. She possessed both girl power and the little sister vibe in her crew of guys, or at least that's what was portrayed in the early days. When she joined Bahamadia and a handful of indie rappers named Precise, Trip, and Unique at DJ Big Cap's The Ladies in the House in 1995, it became one of the most classic female rapper posse cuts, mainly because their collective presence was such a rarity. Everybody has a song that gets you where you need to be. And when we did The Ladies, we all just celebrated with each other, recalls Precise, now an award-winning producer and songwriter for acts like Pink and New Kids on the Block. We were all like, oh, you killed it. Oh, you did this. You did a great job. I remember talking to Lauryn. She was such a sweetheart. It was such a good time. The hip-hop expansion was vast and wide, stretching down south to where Atlanta was crafting its own little niche. The ATL scene was heating up, stylistically hugging a funkier production where in just a few short years, the likes of Outkast and the rest of the Dungeon family would be introduced. Producer Jermaine Dupri was young but hungry, introducing us to the backward pants donning duo Criss Cross and their hit single Jump off 1992's Totally Crossed Out. Dupri was on a mission to find more raw talent, and he got more than he bargained for when he met Chicago-bred brat named Shantae Harris. Shantae, better known as the Brat, was securing success on a local level and was known for her speedy yet sharp rhymes. A rap contest sponsored by Yo MTV Raps landed her on the radar of Criss Cross after the Brat won the grand prize. By then, Criss Cross's success had made them a household name. The two introduced Brat to Jermaine Dupri. In 1993, Criss Cross dropped their follow-up, The Bomb, and featured the Brat on the title track. A year later, the Brat released her debut album, Functified. The project leaned on soul samples, particularly on the title track, where the Brat struck a balance between hyper and laid back. Laced with weed references and nods to pimpin', Brat was like the female answer to Snoop Dogg, complete with a funk slant and smooth delivery, even name-checking Parliament Funkadelic on her Functified verse. She was flanked by Dupree in the video, and while Brat possessed star power, she was placed like an accessory on her own track. That would soon change. Brat saw the game through a different lens. Perhaps it was because she wasn't in a hip-hop hub like New York. Or maybe she saw the roadblocks before everyone else did. Either way, she was far from quiet. While her debut project was certified platinum, it also made history as the first platinum album by a solo female rapper and the second female hip-hop act to go platinum after Salt and Pepper. The Brat rose up the ranks quickly, and immediately she stacked against her female peers. She was candid from the jump, and in an early interview in 1994 with the Atlanta Journal Constitution, she cleared up a rumor that she didn't want to be categorized among her female peers. It wasn't about lacking in sisterhood. It was the notion that if the female rapper category was going to be limiting, then she wanted to be regarded like any talented male rapper. Please print this, she told the interviewer, Sonia Murray. People keep on misinterpreting what I say about that. What I'm saying is females don't get the notoriety that males get. She uses examples of how Will Smith was able to premiere his music video on NBC during the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air sitcom, but Queen Latifah couldn't on Fox during Living Single. Guys just get a lot of hype and the females don't, she continued. That's why I was saying hype me up just like the fellas. Her early aesthetic placed her in between both genders, as her oversized denim, braids, and bandanas spoke exactly to her desire not to be sexualized, to the point where some were even confused about her gender altogether. To Brat's point, however, what was the allure of holding the title of female rapper if proper respect still wasn't being given? On her follow-up, 1996's Another Tantrum, Brat would assume greater creative control of the project, still working with mentor Jermaine Dupri, but seen as an addition to his production and hype man duties, and more of her own person. The lead single, Ghetto Love, featuring TLC's T-Boz on the hook, reached number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. Out west, a new queen was emerging, and she was bearing 2 Afro puffs. The year was 1992, and all of Death Row Records showed up in New Orleans for the Black Radio Exclusive Convention, better known as the BRE. This was the very same event that ended up plastered across new headlines when a fight broke out and 2 people were stabbed, leaving Suge Knight, Dr. Dre, and the DOC arrested. Everybody from Death Row goes to the BRE, producer Chris, the Glove Taylor, remembers. At the time, Chris was part of Ruthless Records' R&B group, Po Broke and Lonely. On the verge of signing with Death Row, Chris was there to perform with his group alongside other R&B acts like R. Kelly. Death Row was heating up thanks to Suge, who was bubbling out west. His growing enterprise functioned as part record label, part gang experience. Considering his blood ties didn't end in the streets, they trickled into every part of his business acumen. We would learn just how toxic his energy would get in later years once he and Dr. Dre parted ways and Tupac was shot. Though, at this point in time, Death Row was merely a crew of musical tough guys willing to pop off at any given moment. When Death Row artists toured, they would go by the name of Death Row inmates, if that's any indicator of their stress-delivering abilities. Back to the BRE. After the event, a fight ensues, Chris recalls. It was a riot. Men are attacking each other left and right, and in the middle of it all stood one woman, the Lady of Rage. In the midst of the riot, I see Rage manhandling cops, Chris says with a laugh. Then she hits a horse right in the face, like in Blazing Saddles. The Lady of Rage didn't just talk about it, she was about it. Born Robin Yvette Allen, Rage first appeared on Dr. Dre's solo album The Chronic on the cuts Lyrical Gangbang and Stranded on Death Row, along with The Doctor's Office skit and the Roach outro. The following year, she appeared on Snoop's Doggy Style on the G-Funk intro and For All My Niggas and Bitches. The time was coming for Rage to stand on her own and show how lyrically potent she could be, and that's how it was for women in predominantly male crews. You got your starter verse on one of the guys' tracks, then you got another and maybe another. If the steam rose, your album would come eventually. If it didn't, you stood in their music videos nodding your head. Rage didn't have to wait that long for her lyrical fury to come full force. In 1994, Rage dropped her solo debut album, Afro Puffs, on the Above the Rim soundtrack. With Snoop Dogg on the ad-libs, Rage delivered a womanifesto for the times, a declaration of showing how one woman can both be tough and unfuckwittable, even with her hair in two perfectly coiffed Afro puffs. With an adjustment to her bra strap, Rage delivered her tough and raw rhymes like a seasoned pro. She didn't fit the mold of female rappers at the time. She broke it. Gangster rap lyrics with a confusingly cute coif, the Lady of Rage wasn't playing any games. The video depicts Rage commanding the room in a black leather jacket with a black lace bra peeking out from underneath in one scene, and in an open stitched black vest with a cowrie shell necklace in another. Black gloves were a must, as if she was about to commit a crime and wanted to leave no trace on the scene. Her energy was unique, a necessary addition to the roster Death Row was building in the waning gangster rap era, which would inevitably close just a few years later with the murder of Tupac Shakur. But Rage was something special, a beast on the mic with commercial appeal. She laid everything down in one take, Chris remembers, of the Afro Puff studio session. Rage sounds like she sounds. It wasn't hard to mix her. I recorded her. There was nothing to it. She has such a smooth voice. While the song didn't chart incredibly high on the Billboard Hot 100 or the Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart, it reached the top 5 on both the Dance Club Songs and the Hot Rap Songs chart. The former indicative of Rage's reach in spite of the gangster rap peg. What I didn't like was how nothing else happened after that, Chris says of Rage's career. For one, reviews of her single chose to home in on Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg on the Afro Puffs extended remix. And Billboard referred to her rhymes in a 1994 review as brassy, bragging. Her solo debut, Necessary Roughness, wouldn't release until 1997, long after the reign of her hit single and the Death Row dynasty had faded. The album landed within months of the Notorious B.I.G.'s passing and close to a year after the death of Tupac Shakur, when hip-hop was already transitioning out of the gangster rap sound. Jay-Z had arrived a year earlier with 1996's Reasonable Doubt, and its follow-up, 1997's In My Lifetime Volume 1, sonically changed the genre. The fans' tastes followed. Rage's debut album also marked the very last release of Death Row Records, Too Little, Too Late. She just disappeared, laments Chris Taylor. I think with everything else heating up, she got lost in the mix. Another Death Row inmate. Y'all already know what I'm about to say. Hip hop is a conversation, so what the fuck is you saying? There is so much packed in between this interlude and this chapter. I want to know what stood out to you. I want to know, did you hear any new titles, any new artists, any new albums that you weren't aware of? Put it all down in the comments. I love y'all. For real, for real.